Hey guys, so with the release of the THT fair value bands and the multi-time frame BX trender yesterday, I thought I'd come out and make a quick video applying some of this analysis over on the Bitcoin chart, and as well as to have a look at the macro cycle. Now, starting on the Actually, if you don't know where to get these, you can find them over on the Traders Helping Traders website at Capitalist Academy. They are free. You've just got to create an account and enroll in the course. Now, I highly suggest you watch the course because obviously you need to learn how to set these indicators up and how to use them, because otherwise they're just another few things on your screen that you don't know how to use. Anyways, you can see on the monthly time frame, Bitcoin is currently still hovering just a tad above this 50% level of the cycle low to all-time high. And one other thing to note is we're also meeting resistance on this midline. I believe this is a 33 SMA. And currently that Bitcoin is pretty much just chopping between the 33 SMA at around 73k and the 50% level at 70.8k. You can see how effective this this new market bias, which isn't exactly the same as the existing market bias, even when you have it on the same settings, you can see it's ever so slightly different. And we've pretty much bounced almost exactly off the bottom of this indicator, which is perfection. And if you have a look at the previous cycle, almost the exact same thing happened. We ended up retesting around midway up the market bias, which is pretty much exactly what we've done now. If we have a look at the previous cycles, we're going to look at the 2019 cycle. You can see we actually got a pretty strong bounce off the bottom of that market bias, and we actually pierced the top of it. And if something like that were to happen in this case, we could see Bitcoin rally up to around 86, potentially even $90,000. Now, with all the stuff going on in Iran, there's two ways to look at it. Either it resolves itself, like the COVID low, where everyone's panic sold and the market very quickly returns back to where it wants to be, And the other option is it ends up being worse than expected, like this grinding period in 2022, and you get this final capitulation, which in that case was the FTX collapse. So maybe we could chop sideways for a few weeks or months, and then we get that final capitulation. But theories aside, the monthly BX trender is still red, and as I've said a million times before, typically, since we have done around 1,050, 1,060 days up, I do believe we've seen a full Bitcoin 3-year up cycle. So I do expect we should see about a year down. And as you can see, just visually, without counting, we should expect a few more dark red months on the BX trender, which at the minimum should see us chop sideways and come down a little bit. At the most, we should see a few further capitulations. Now, coming over to the weekly time frame, you can see I've actually got the Ishimoku cloud set up. I probably butchered that pronunciation because I'm not Japanese. If anyone wants to correct me, feel free to do so. And I'm just going to show you a little something. From the 2022 cycle, you can see once we broke down from the bottom of the Ishimoku cloud, we didn't quite come up to retest it, but when that cloud flipped from green to red, that was pretty much just before the March low, where if you watch Jason on YouTube, that was pretty much the macro higher low that told you the bull market was just getting started. So the Ishimoku cloud, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful indicators that tells you when a bear market shifts back to a bull market. And you can see here in 2023, this entire sideways consolidation period was outside the Ishimoku cloud for the most part, but as soon as you started to get those weekly closes inside the cloud, we did still see a flush out, But you can see anyone that bought Bitcoin, 29K is probably not complaining that they had to hold through a 25K drawdown. I mean, that's still, a 15, 20% drawdown on your portfolio. But once you started to get these green, I used to call them vector candles. You can call them bullish engulfing candles or whatever, but once you start to get these massive green bullish engulfing candles inside the Ishimoku cloud, that's pretty much the start of the bull market. Like if you buy in, even if you bought in at 29K, 28K, 30K, and you rode it to the top of the cloud, that's still, a 30, 40% return. And quite often, it will go above the cloud and just keep going. And it will usually keep going to this green resistance line. You can see this green line here. This line pretty much called the 2021 first top. Did it call the second top? Where's this green line? No, it didn't. So you can see, as Jason has always been saying on his channel, the second top was weaker than the first top. Because all the moving averages and everything was already starting to turn down. And I've shown you in the past with the BX trend that all the momentum indicators were like dying. The price only just made a higher high. And that's pretty much what happened this cycle as well. This huge greed, the 74K top when we had all those altcoins popping off, etc. When it was like Solana alt season. You can see this 108K top pretty much as well in 2024. When we had all the Trump meme coins, the Melania coin, etc. Hawktoir coin and all that. It pretty much came up to these green lines, to this green line here. And again, when we saw these tops in 2025, they were weaker because this green line was already turning downwards. And I do not claim to have called this top. And I do regret not using this indicator because if I had, I would have probably saved myself a lot of pain from watching my altcoin portfolio drop potentially up to 70% in some cases. And I would have potentially loaded up on some bigger shorts around this period. But either way, we can only, I guess, watch and learn for the future. And speaking of the future, we have just broken underneath the green Ishimoku cloud. You can see in 2022, we typically get this weekly upswing that doesn't quite reach the cloud before we get a flush out. And you can see we've got this weekly upswing. In this case, we've actually tapped the bottom of the cloud and potentially, as I've been talking about, we should see a further flush out into the low 50s or high $40,000 range. Now, the Ishimoku cloud in this particular case isn't giving us any downside price targets, so we will probably have to use a different indicator for that, but I just find that very, very interesting. And if you have a look at where the cloud is right now, it's saying that potentially we should be able to see the cloud, the upper and lower bands of the cloud crossover, potentially sometime either end of October, start of November, which lines up with that Q3, Q4 bottom based on the 3 years up, 1 year down cycle, as well as many other cycles that Jason has been talking about over on his YouTube channel. And I absolutely love it when multiple layers of analysis stack up together. Now, another thing to look at is the fair value bands on the THT indicator. You can see in this case, when price rallies into that 2x standard deviation band, it typically marks a very, very major top. And you can clearly see we had that happen, the first peak in 2021 and our 2024 peak. And when price rallies into that 1x standard deviation band, which didn't actually happen in the cycle high of 2021, but happened in that slightly higher high, that April top in 2021 compared to the March top. And same here, it happened in the December and January tops, 2024, 2025, but we didn't get it in the actual cycle high. So that's potentially something else I'm going to be watching for the next cycle to call a top. And Again, you know, we got no downside price targets for this indicator, but it gives you a pretty good take profit region. Having a look at the weekly BX trender, which I haven't actually updated to the THT multi-time frame yet. I am potentially going to do that right now. I'm actually gonna have to refresh my chart. Give me 1 second. And you can clearly see the new THT BX trender is a lot more colorful, and I really like it compared to the one from Puppy Therapy. And obviously, it lets you overlay a monthly BX trender on a weekly chart or weekly BX trend on a daily chart, which I will talk about in my future videos, as I think it's absolutely wonderful for trading. But for now, you can see we are on track to get a second week of light green close. And if this week doesn't turn into a massive flush out, typically when you get 2 weeks in a light green, you'll typically see further upside prices. Now, you can see even through, I guess, the early bull market, you can see even though you won't get closes at higher prices, you'll get wicks higher. And price really won't capitulate when the BX trender is light green. And you can see, even in a bear market, when you start to get these 2 weeks light green, you'll see further prices, even if it's only on a wicking basis. And through here, March of 2022, you can see we got our 2 weeks light green, and that was pretty much the top, but that third week still went a tiny bit higher. So I'm obviously going to discount these absolutely massive parabolic breakouts because they were on top of the market bias and we are underneath the market bias. So what I do expect is price to at least test the range of this wick, if not go above it. So I am currently hedged long and short with a short bias. I believe I'm about 65-70% short, but I will be taking profits on my long hedge anywhere from around 73k to potentially 78k. If we do manage to go higher, that's going to be wonderful. But I think in terms of the probabilities, it's around 50-50 in my back testing. If we'll see a wick higher this week or next week, or whether we'll see 2 or 3 more weeks of slightly higher prices, which could potentially see us retest, you know, if this market bias starts to keep sloping downwards, we could potentially retest the underside at maybe 80-85k, which Peter DiCarlo has been talking about on X, and I am absolutely not ruling out of the question. Coming to the daily time frame, you can see we're on track unless something insane happens in the next hour that causes Bitcoin to drop $3,000 or more. We're on track for 3 daily closes above the 50-day triangular moving average. Combined with this signal bar, as Michael likes to call it, or just a candlestick pattern where you see this long wick down and a pretty decent close on decent volume, you can see it's almost like panic selling into the hands of smart money in a way. And coupled with, you know, I've got technical signals on pretty much every time frame to suggest price is going to go higher. We've got this 4th time breakdown fail. And remember, failed move down typically equals a fast move up. I am absolutely on track for higher prices in the next few days. On the 4-hour time frame, you can see we're on top of the fair value band, which is a great place to be, as that typically means we'll rally to the upside. However, we're meeting a lot of resistance on this short-term 50% level from the 76k high to the 67k bottom, so just this last daily swing over here. And if we can start to see some 4-hour 1-bar higher lows using the Gann swing indicator above 71.7, roughly, it would be a great sign to see some continuation into at least this first standard deviation band. You can see we tend to reject quite a bit of this first standard deviation band, and if we do cut straight through it, we typically stop dead on that second standard deviation band. So If we can get some higher lows above 71.7, I'd expect some continuation to at least around 73.2, and potentially we could see this 76.5 as our daily swing high, potentially even a weekly swing top, because that would meet my criteria of just taking out this previous high on a wicking basis. Potentially we spend a couple hours, maybe a day there, and if we do get a lower high and capitulate from there, dropping into the low 60s, maybe even the high $50,000 range, that would mean my analysis has worked out perfectly. On the 1 hour time frame, there's not really much to talk about. I have been testing this new THT fair value band indicator on the 1 hour and 15-minute time frame, and I would be really keen to develop a intraday short-term scalping trading strategy, but for now I am still doing a bit of back testing, and I will obviously make a video once I've developed a strategy, but for now, looking at the weekly, monthly, daily, and 4 hour timeframes, that is what I see. I'll probably talk about the stock market and the US dollar in a separate video, because this video has gone on for long enough. But for now, thank you all for watching, and please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and you want to see future ones. Goodbye.